Hi, everyone. Today I am so thrilled to have Rebecca Weller on our little podcast. Bex is a best-selling author, a health and life coach, a speaker, and a creator of Sexy Sobriety, which is an online course, my first ever course I did. And Rebecca, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I think you've covered it.
I've covered it, and she's the most gloriously energetic, joyful person. I love your vibe. I love your vibe. So welcome and thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here, Meg. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. We're so excited. So just to begin, can I ask you, so at the beginning of your first book, A Happier Hour, probably the first book I ever read when I started my sober journey 4.5 years ago. It talks about your final hangover. So I was just wondering if you can talk about your life up until that point. I know that's a huge, but just the story that got you there, your sober journey, your drinking journey, I should say.
Yeah, I suppose like many other women, I started drinking in my teens, and I was a very shy and introverted girl, and I didn't want to be. I wanted to be extroverted. I wanted to be like fun and likable and outgoing. And I believed that alcohol was the magic elixir that could get me there. And so, of course, I fell in love with it. And I would then see myself binge drinking, like on the weekends, like any social interactions. I would be pre-gaming because I'd be, nervous about arriving and sort of social anxiety. And I believed during those sort of like 20 years of binge drinking that, oh, I'm an extrovert now, like I became known as the social party organizer, as the clipboard queen, the girl with the plan, like I was always the one getting everyone together and first in line at the bar. And I worked through many different jobs in the corporate world. And in 2013, I started studying to become a health coach. And this was just because this was just a hobby. This was because I was working as a cost analysis for a global energy company. And so my work was very logical. It was very mathematical. It was very cut and dry. And just as a creative outlet, I'd started making this little healthy food blog. And because I was getting more questions about this little healthy food blog, I started to become more curious about food and its impact on the body and how it makes us feel and think differently. And so I studied at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition just out of curiosity, just for fun, really, just as a little fun outlet hobby. And the funny thing happened was that by the end of the year of studying that course, I thought, what if I did leave my corporate career and become a health coach? Like it was this wild leap of faith that felt like something that was so ridiculous, but at the same time, it excited me. And so I took the leap, and all my colleagues, of course, thought I was completely bonkers. And I launched myself into this new career. And, by then I was eating really well, and I was taking care of myself, and I felt like, yeah, I've got this self-care stuff down. Like I'm getting the hang of this. Like, this is great. I love what I'm learning and how I'm growing. But I still had the binge drinking issue. And, sometimes we believe, well, I certainly did, that if I left the corporate world, there wouldn't be the month-end stress. There wouldn't be the functions to go to. There wouldn't be, colleagues going for drinks. And so naturally I would drink less, right? But when we launch ourselves into a new endeavor, we bring up a lot of new fears. And I started to really get a lot of anxiety about like what I was doing. Like, how am I going to keep this business afloat? Like, this is my livelihood. Like, what am I doing here? And I started to drink more like on the couch because I was too tired to go out. So, it really was coming to a crux where I sat down in a Skype session with one of my beautiful clients one day, and she said to me, sometimes when I feel lonely, I drink more. And I said, well, that's okay. And I was just horrified when I said it, because I was like, it's not okay. It's never okay to mask our feelings by using any kind of crux. And it was one of those defining moments where I thought, I need to sort this out. Like, I feel like I've half-assed my way through life. I'd always done well through the corporate world and stuff, but not really through my own decision making, not really through me being like, this is really what I want to do. This is really what I want to pour my heart and soul into. So for the first time, I had an opportunity to really pour my heart and soul into a career that might light me up. I didn't want to sabotage that. And at the same time, I was also in a new relationship, because never mind pouring on the stress, right? A new job and a new relationship.
Yeah, right.
And we just moved in together, and he doesn't really care for drinking. And so he was, getting really sick of my nonsense and making it very clear that, this wasn't okay. This behavior wasn't okay. So I was feeling the pressure there as well of like, well, do I want to stay in a relationship that is very healthy and feels like, my dream that I've always wanted? Again, do I want to pour myself into it, or do I want to self-sabotage it? Do I want to run and chicken out and sort of be flaky and miss out on this opportunity as well? And so those two things, like, they just started ticking away in the back of my mind. I still kept drinking for a few months, but it was starting to change. It was starting to feel a little bit tainted with sadness of like, I know I shouldn't be doing this. Like, the fun that I used to get from it, it's gone. And so I kept moving slowly towards this goalpost. And that last hangover that you talk about in a happier hour, I was going to visit my parents. And when I would go visit my family, because they like to drink as well. And so whenever I would go stay with them, we would always have drinks. Like, I would stay the night, and it was never any question. So I went down there and I stayed the night with my parents, and we had champagne and all the rest of it. But that night when I had the champagne, like the high that I always was chasing, it was just so out of reach, because I knew in my gut that this wasn't working. Like, this was the last time. And I drove home the next morning after telling my parents, look, I'm not going to drink for a while, and told my love, look, I'm not going to drink for a while. And the following day, I had a hens party to go to.
Wow.
And so I was so like, I thought, in the next week, I have not only a hens party and a wedding at a cocktail bar and a colleague drinks to go to at a fancy new bar in the city, but I'm always going to have things on my calendar. Like, if I don't do it now, when I'm feeling so sad about my relationship with alcohol, then when? And so I was terrified, but I thought, I've got to try something different. What I've been doing for 20 years has not been working well for me.
Amazing. Yeah. And I find that when you make that decision, something will come up that you think, oh, well, I'll just go to that event and then I'll stop. But like you said, something's always going to come up. I mean, the fact you had 3 major drinking events in your first week is pretty huge.
Right.
And how did you go? How were you?
Oh my gosh. The hens party was weird, because I mentioned to my girlfriends when I arrived, oh, I'm not drinking. And they kind of just all looked at each other and they were like, for how long? And I said, oh, maybe 3 months. And they were like, okay. And then just quickly moved on to another conversation. So of course I got paranoid, like, oh my God, have they been talking about me behind my back and thinking like it's about time she stopped drinking or what? And so that played in my mind. Then I went to the wedding at the cocktail bar, and that one was so difficult. Like, I really struggled through that one. And then the morning I woke up after that one, I said to Dom, my love, I am never doing that. Like, I'm never not drinking again. And he was like, it'll get easier. It'll get easier. And I thought, okay, you know what I need to do to make it easier? I need to reinforce my tools. Like, I need to make sure that the next one is. And so I became determined to figure out, okay, how can I like hack this process? How can I make sure that I feel better at the next one? And at the third one, the colleague drinks, I went in and I put all these things in place, all the stuff that I teach in Sexy Sobriety and throughout my books. And I went in there and I was nervous because of how the last one had gone. But what I've come to discover about socializing sober is that there's a magic combination of the people, the entertainment, the atmosphere, your energy on the night, that there's so much that goes into it that can make it a good night or a bad night. And we tend to think that when we were drinking, we didn't have bad or boring nights, but we did. It's just that we kind of like drank ourselves past the point of recognizing it. And so I went into this event and I walked out of there, Meg, I was elated. Like I walked out and I was like, oh my gosh, I can socialize sober. This is incredible. Like it was such an incredible feeling. Then I was like, I'm so glad I didn't give up at the first hurdle, like because it obviously just takes practice and I can get better at this. It's a skill.
Absolutely. And it's so great that you didn't stop after that first bad experience and you just used it to your advantage to work out ways to get through. And we have talked about on this podcast, Bella and I, about some tools to use before you do go out. Because I think preparation is, a bit of a thought change can make all the difference. And that's what we want. And just a question I often get from clients and that is, they're worried about losing friends. So do you feel you lost friendships when you went alcohol free?
Yeah, for sure. I did. And at the time that devastated me. But now I look back and see that was the best thing for me. There are some relationships, some friendships that I was able to evolve. Like I was able to say to them, first I'd start with something like, who wants to come to a yoga class? Crickets. No one wants to come. Okay. All right. I won't give up at the first hurdle, right? I'll think of something else. Okay. Who would like to come to this cinema, this movie that's happening? No one's, no takers. Okay. I've got to try something else. Who would like to come to like hula hoop lessons in the park? And I had a friend say, yeah, okay, I'll come to that. And this was fantastic because we'd always had like a drinking relationship. And we got in that park and we were doing these hula hoop lessons. We were killing ourselves laughing. We had the best time. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like there are certain relationships and friendships that you can evolve and there's many others that now I do things like I have a friend and we used to always meet for cocktails. Now we always meet for a walk around the river and a coffee afterward, like a coffee date. So there are friends that you can do those things with, but sadly there are those other friendships that were only centered around the bottle. And so those ones, as much as I tried, I wasn't able to evolve. And, they're on their own journey. I get that. So, it's the other thing that's really cool about, I think, entering into sobriety and looking at friendships is that you allow space for those that you didn't potentially allow space for before. Like there are some friends and people in my circles that I was like, well, I'm not going to hang out with them because they don't want to drink, and that's all I wanted to do. So when I stopped drinking, suddenly I gravitated towards them and started hanging out with them more. And now I do things with my friends that are so much more interesting, not to mention less harmful, so much more fun and fulfilling. And I wouldn't have allowed space to get to know those people as much if I was still drinking. So it's cool. Like you do lose some friendships, but you gain others.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like for me, some of the drinking relationships were just surface level anyway, because we might have got deep and meaningful, but it was when we were drinking, you wouldn't remember it, or it was just things you might not have even wanted to say to someone. Yes. And I found that the friendships after are more authentic and deeper. They're deeper.
And more trustworthy, like not more trustworthy, but like more fundamental as well, as in, there's many drinking friends that I thought I had deep and meaningfuls with. Yeah, we've got connections, but could I call them to come help me with something on a Saturday morning? Probably not. I couldn't really rely or depend on them. So the new friendships, I feel like they're much more real.
Absolutely. And I kind of think, I don't know if I feel like I have fewer, but I definitely have, it's quality over quantity type thing.
Yes. I love that so much.
Yeah. And I really like connecting on a one-to-one thing. So like you said, a walk and a coffee or something. I found a lot of joy in that.
Yes. Do you know, it's so funny because years ago when I was in the corporate world, I was working with a guy and I said to him something about, come to this event, you might make some new friends. And he's like, I've got enough friends. And that blew my mind at the time. It's like almost like my brain spun off its axis, like, what? You've got enough? Who doesn't want more friends? And he was like, well, if you only have a small handful, then you can go deeper with them and you can be a better friend. And this just whirred away in the background of my mind for so long of like, I kind of understand it, but I'm not getting it. And it's only now that quality over quantity is so delicious.
Yeah, it is. And I think I was like that when I was drinking. It's like new friends, maybe they'll be drinkers.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it was just more options, which sounds horrendous. And I don't mean to sound so shallow, but it was like, oh, maybe we'll get on, you know, go drinking somewhere new or.
Yes, it was always more is more, right? If a little is good, more must be better. And I always wanted more people to come because because I knew some would leave early in the night.
Exactly.
And I wanted more people to be there at the end.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted more drinking partners.
Yes, exactly. Oh my goodness. I think I heard you speaking. I get confused if I've read it or it's probably in your book, but you were talking about finding your dreams after stopping drinking and getting out of your comfort zone. And getting out of your comfort zone, I've found, is a necessity for me after stopping drinking, and something a lot of people are scared of, but it's so liberating, I've found. But I was wondering what you feel about it, just so people know it's not as scary as it, you know, can seem. Or
Yeah, and I totally agree with this because I feel like in early sobriety, I would often feel resentful when I would look at old friend groups and I'd be like, well, how come they don't have to change? And I have to do all this change. Like, how come it's me? Like, how come they can stay in their comfort zones? And it took a while to realize, well, but what a revelation, like what a gift to be able to get to change. We don't have to change, we get to. And you know, I always love that meme that says, I didn't get sober just to sit on the couch, or I didn't come this far just to come this far. You know, those sort of like little ones where I'm like, yeah, you know, why not push yourself and try? And there's an exercise that I like to do, which sounds a little bit morbid, but it's about like writing your epitaph and thinking about, you know, we won't be here forever. So really, what have you got to lose? Why not throw yourself into something wholeheartedly and see if it works out? If it doesn't, no worries. You've got some lessons from that. You've learned something and it might lead you to something else. And, you know, all the good things in my life have come from taking one step and that leading somewhere that I never expected. So, you know, unless we sort of step out of our comfort zone and try new things, we'll never know. And we change so much in sobriety as well. You know, as people, we grow and evolve so much. And there's so many things I thought I didn't like. And now I love, like, for example, hiking, right? Once upon a time, like someone said to me, we're going hiking. I'd be like, ew, why would I be doing outdoorsy stuff? That sounds horrible. Little did I know, now in sobriety, I put on a backpack with my day's picnic in there. I put on my hiking boots and we're off for the day. And I flippin' love it. It's so weird. So you never know. And I would never know that joy if I thought that I was still the same person as I was when I was drinking.
Yeah, for sure. And I love hiking too.
It's so fun, isn't
it? But it's so good. And I never would have considered it because it just interrupted with drinking and hangovers.
Yeah,
like, not that I wanted a hangover, but it's like, well, I'm not hiking. I mean, but I get some, I love what you said about, you know, it sounded a bit morbid, but, you know, writing down, we don't have massive lives, do we? And it's just so important to try everything that we want. And I get clients to sort of look at anything, no matter how small, that they might have thought about in the past that they might want to do. And you might not try them all, but you might be surprised. And like with hiking or, you know, and just a way for people to look at, because I think it can be scary for people thinking about stopping drinking, going, but I don't want to try new things or change, and it can be sort of a wall against taking that step. And I understand it. You know, it's scary and it is getting out of your comfort zone, but we don't know what we don't know. And something that you might think sounds hideous beforehand might be amazing, because we are different, you know, and there's work involved with that. But yeah, you just don't know until you try some things, and it's just so nice to have met people. Like I do some walks with people, and you can talk a lot on a walk.
Yes, you do.
It's actually really fun. So,
Yes.
and there's just loads of things. Like I love that you did hula hoops. That is so, and you know what my mum did? A laughing club in the
Oh,
park. I mean, how cool. And I think at
brilliant.
the time I'm like, but how fun. Like laughing is just so good. And you get a
So
high
good
from
for the
that.
soul. Exactly. There's so many great things out there now that you can try. Like I did the aerial yoga and stuff where you hang upside down, and
Oh
it's just
gosh.
real, just like, these amazing things
Yes.
that I was missing out on before. Like I feel like you can have such a richer, more varied life in sobriety, which is the opposite of what I believed. Whereas when I was drinking, really it was a bit boring because all I wanted to do was drink.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I get another question from clients about, I drink because I'm bored. And the reality for me was I'm boring when I
Mm,
drink. And I ended up, like you said, being a lounge drinker, a couch drinker.
yep.
And, COVID did not help that. It kind of
Mhm.
encouraged it, but I didn't want to go out anymore. So I wasn't even socializing. And
Mhm.
so I certainly was boring. And it's just a funny, and I get surface level people think that, but once you look into why you feel that it's not boring to drink, you find out a lot about yourself. And
Mhm.
I just feel it can be very boring drinking.
Yes, yes, it can be. Really, we really get stuck in a rut, and
Yeah,
we fool ourselves into believing it's fun. And so to
yeah,
break out of that is just it's magical.
absolutely. And you said something in your book, I think it was, I'm sorry, your third book,
Ah, yeah, chameleon.
Chameleon, which is fantastic. But the dedication was for anyone who's ever abandoned themselves. And I wish you the magic and joy of finding your way back to yourself. And that is just such a beautiful way to look at it. And I totally just went, I abandoned myself for so long. And it's sad. Well, it's not. It's because we've come out the other end, but that's exactly what happened. It was an abandonment of self.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little
Exactly
bit
right.
about that?
Yeah, I mean, I see it so much like when I was drinking, even in figuring out how I would get home from an event. Like I look back now and I think there were times when I was like, how am I going to get home? I don't know. I'll just drink more. And so like if that's not abandoning yourself
Mm,
in the middle of a situation or a place, I don't know what is. Like now you're making it super unsafe of like how you're going to get home from this pub or club or
mm,
bar. Um and then also really how I would drink to the point of blackout. Like
mm,
really I was abandoning, I always thought, oh, drinking relieves my overthinking. This was the thing, like because I have always been a big overthinker. And
yeah.
it would stop all the chatter in my head. And so I wanted to abandon myself rather than sitting in the emotions, thinking about what's going on here. Like, why are you overthinking? Rather than getting to the root cause, I wanted to run away. And I wanted to run away from responsibility. I wanted to run away from the thoughts in my head. I wanted to run away from my current situation, the current mess I'd made, or the mess I'd made yesterday.
Mm,
And and I wanted to abandon myself over and over again. And I would betray myself and so many of us when we're drinking do this, of like making these rules around my drinking and then breaking them. How can you trust yourself when you constantly say to yourself, I'm only having 3 drinks and then you have 7, or
mm,
I'm only drinking Friday night and then you drink all the way through the weekend? Like, how can you trust that you ever keep your word? And if we can't trust ourselves, how do we trust others? And so, there's so much in that abandoning ourselves throughout drinking. Like there's so many instances where we do it, and when we find our way back to ourselves, and the learning of like starting to really trust ourselves again and really embrace who we are and manage our emotions and things like that in a better way. It's just such a revelation and such a feeling of peace, of like I no longer have to run.
yeah.
I can stay with myself and start to feel really centered and really peaceful within ourselves.
Yeah. And there's some forgiveness of self that comes with that, isn't there? And it's kind of like, the reason I felt sad is because you think you're just pushing yourself down. Like, I'll just drink you away. I don't care about you in a person. Like,
yeah, right. That's
and
exactly it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like you dismissing yourself.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's a really, I mean, it really was a aha moment, as Oprah would say. I thought you've summed up exactly how I felt. And it's really hard to sit with those emotions and feelings that we've hidden for so long.
Oh, yeah.
But in doing so, you know, we just gain so much more, and we let our authentic person come out, which has been hidden for so long, which is just
So
huge. True. And so along those lines, you know, you were talking about the big dreams that you were able to go after once you stopped drinking. So after a happier hour, what was your journey like from there to where you wrote 2 books after that?
Yes, I did. So I was running Sexy Sobriety, an online program where I help women to live alcohol free. And many of the members in there, when they would get to certain days, they would be like, well, you weren't like this on day 5 or something. And I was like, I was, trust me, I was. And that was what had inspired me to write A Happier Hour, just to share my journey and show them like, look, I totally was. And then, my next book I wrote as I sort of like a process through writing a book, because you have to overcome yourself in order to write a book. And so it was sort of like the behind the scenes story of that. And Chameleon, I came to more recently, where, you know, it's really about people pleasing and overcoming that desire in ourselves for approval, that approval addiction. And, you know, I really sunk my teeth into writing that one. I really enjoyed it. I really feel like I got as much out of it as, like, I hope the reader does, because it really made me question some long held beliefs and some things that I had always thought of, but I wasn't sure if they were true. And so, like, I really had to examine within myself, like, is this true? Like, and what examples do you have of like where this has been the case? And so I really enjoyed that process of writing that. And, you know, now I'm coming up to 9 years sober.
Congratulations.
Which blows my mind. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow.
And I've got a few more books that are like spinning away in my mind as well. Like, I'm working on a socializing sober journal at the moment, because I was like, you know what what I would have loved as well, and what I can see our members would love as well, is that you know, something that's asking you questions and helping you prepare for an event before you go, like a little best friend guidebook before you go to an event. Because, you know, I always felt myself spiral before I would go to events sober, especially weddings and long events like that. And then, you know, like a few other things I've got in the works as well, including like one about friendships, because I feel like that's such an important topic when we get sober. So I'm really excited. And I think that's another point as well about creativity, is we often buy into that belief that I certainly did, about the drunken writer. Okay. Like the romantic notion of, oh, you have to, you know, write drunk, edit sober. But you really are able to tap into so much more creativity once you do the work within yourself.
It's amazing, that thought, isn't it? That's common. I think that, you know, right when you're drunk. It's the same with people that sort of say the truth comes out when you're drunk, but I think it's different. It's not real.
Not right. It's not. I said a lot of things when I was drunk that I didn't really mean.
Absolutely. And I've had to go back, and I remember people, you know, people still say to me, well, the truth comes out and I think, no, see, it doesn't.
No.
And I started testing that towards the end and going, no, I would never have said that. And it just gives you this, it's not a confidence, it's just this right to say things in your head, and it's like, it just can be so
arrogance.
Stupid. It is. And it's like, what were you thinking? Well, you weren't thinking, but it's been nice to realize that's not a true saying.
No, right. Yeah.
No.
Like, because I know I exaggerated things when I was drunk, and you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't think I made up stories, but I definitely exaggerated things or
Yeah.
like insinuated things that probably weren't true just to create drama, for sure.
Exactly. And I think even things about myself, I'd go, no, like I don't really feel that. Like, you know, you could
Yes.
get drunk and go, I really miss that person because whatever. And the next day you go, no, I
No,
don't.
and I think we're easily led when we're drinking as well. Like if someone puts a suggestion in our heads, like maybe you missed them because of this. Yeah, I missed them because of that. You know,
Yes.
so
Yeah. And I think they say, well, I don't know who they is, but you know, the opposite of addiction can be connection. And I think I was looking for that connection and sometimes felt that getting, you know, down to the deep and nitty gritty was a connection, but it just wasn't ever authentic. And I think that's what I found on the other side is real connections, which is so much more valuable and real.
Oh my gosh, yes. Because you'd kind of feel empty afterwards, like after a drinking night where you think, oh, we've had a big D&M. The next morning, like there's an underlying current of just emptiness. Whereas now, you know that it's all real. Everything you say, you mean, and everything, you know, like, and also I never used to take responsibility for my part in relationships, really. Like if I said something wrong, I would hide then from the person. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd feel like, oh, I'm embarrassed I said that. I shouldn't have said that. So now I'll just avoid the person. It was so silly. And now I love that, you know, if I say something that that I think, oh, that's not how I meant it. I love being able to go back and say to them, like I'm a big believer in over communication rather than under communication. To be able to go back and say, oh, listen, that when I said that, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. Like I meant it to be like, this is what I was trying to say, just to make sure that there's no, misunderstandings and stuff. Like I love that there's that accountability in relationships as well.
I think so. And I think part of that not being able or not doing that when we were drinking is partly due to people, I think, would say, well, you told the truth when you're drinking. So you couldn't really go back. And I felt I didn't have a right to go back and say, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to stuff up the whole night by doing that, because people would just go, well, yeah, I think you did, you know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, God, heart-wrenching.
Oh,
Yeah, I feel that in the pit of my stomach. Yes.
Oh, how good is it to wake up and not have to worry what you've
Oh
done
my
or said or
gosh.
texted or
Oh, Meg. And I used to like climb around on my floor trying to find my phone. Like, what did I post on Facebook? Like,
Yes.
oh my God, the sense of dread and those cold pins and needles that will take over your whole body as you search your phone for like, who did I text? What did I do? And I would hate it when I would see that I'd left a voicemail for someone, because then who the hell knows what I said?
Exactly. And you
Good
can't
luck.
delete the voicemail.
Yes,
But you've just
exactly.
reminded me of deleting the messages I'd sent. God, I hope someone hasn't read it, like on Facebook. It's like, and I don't even think it could delete from, it was just awful.
It was
Awful.
horrible. It was really horrible. And we fooled ourselves into believing this was fun.
I know. And very occasionally now, because I don't actually follow a lot of people that aren't inspiring. Like I just crowd my Insta and Facebook with what I want to be. So less just more positive and more sobriety things and things like that. But occasionally I'll see someone post and I will think they're drinking. And I think they're going to be a bit embarrassed in the morning.
The next day. Yes.
And it's like, I'll move along. I won't.
Yeah.
And all I think is, thank God it's not me, because
I know.
I had no stop button there. It was whew,
oh my gosh, no.
next level. But so your books have all been just really inspiring, and I found them just resonating so much with me. And I kind of look at all the people I meet, and it's so common that a lot of us were people pleasers and worried what everyone thought. And I don't know, do you think it goes back to just this underlying belief of I think a lot of things can go back to not feeling lovable or good enough. But, you know, it just seems a lot of us are like that.
Yeah. And what I'm seeing as well is like a lot of us who would drink a lot tend to be more sensitive by nature, tend to sort of be able to read the room more and pick up on other people's energy and, you know, thinking about like, did they mean this when they said this, or did they mean that, you know, that kind of thing. And yeah, this approval addiction as well, of like finding ourselves in a place where we will do or say anything to be liked. Like it's exhausting. Like I remember going into an event in early sobriety, and it was with some people that they were sort of just acquaintances. So I was quite nervous about how it would be. And I went in there and I thought, oh gosh, I hope it doesn't run longer than 2 hours, because I'd figured out that 2 hours was kind of my maximum before I get burnt out. And then I thought to myself, as I drove over there, like, why do I get so burnt out at these things? Why am I so exhausted afterwards? And I realized it's because I'm constantly on pins and needles. Like I'm constantly scanning to see, is this going well? Are they liking me? Is it, am I fitting in? And what if I didn't do that? What if I just relaxed and just went in and be like, hey, this is me. Take it or leave it. This is what I got. That's it. And I found myself having this huge sigh of relief. And at that event, guess what? It went for 3 hours. I wasn't burnt out because I was just chilled and I was just me. I wasn't trying so hard. And it's kind of like, it's a beautiful trait to want to try hard and to want to please people and fit in with people, but it can also run to our detriment where, if we again betray ourselves, if we sell our souls in order to be liked, well, what does that leave us? No soul. And so we then feel abandoned again. We feel like we've betrayed ourselves. We've put someone else's joy or preferences above our own, rather than being honest. And what I came to discover was that we can still be a nice, kind person and say no. You can still leave white space in your calendar because it's good for your mental health. You don't have to give yourself away in order to win approval. And it, funnily enough, the more we are just ourselves and the more we accept ourselves and love ourselves as we are and just relax and don't try so hard, the more we have real genuine connections with those who we resonate with most and who resonate with us. So, there's a story that I tell in Chameleon about the thirds, about, 1/3 of the world will always be, will always love us no matter what we do. They always think we're the best things since spiced olives. And then there's 1/3 that will always be indifferent towards us. They'll be like, oh yeah, she's whatever, take her or leave her. And there'll always be 1/3 of the world who won't like us, no matter what we do, no matter what color our shoes are, doesn't matter. They will not like us. And, we spend too long trying to win over those 2/3 rather than focusing on just that 1/3 and like how beautiful it is to have people that we actually gel with, and that it's okay that we don't gel with everyone. We don't need to.
Totally. That's such a nice way to look at it. The thirds. It's and it's kind of a relief or liberating, to just think, well, yeah, I don't have to get anyone to like me. And it like you said, it's exhausting. And I think so many people are doing the same. It's are we ever connecting? So
that's right.
a relief to sort of let that go. But
I read a funny book that was talking about, like, he went to I want to say Russia, but I can't remember which country it was. But he went to a place that I think used to be a communist country, and he went on some dates, and he said the women were so rude, and he was like, I don't understand, like, what's with this culture? Why are they all so rude? And apparently all the people were. And he said that one of the women said to him, do you know why? It's because, like, in capitalist countries, your currency is being liked. If you are liked, then you can create more and you can sell more. And, this is part of what is required. And for our politics and everything as well, of course, you need to be liked. And there it was more about trust. Who can you trust? So they valued honesty above likability. And I just found that so interesting of like, isn't that so funny as well? So, potentially it's not just traumas or things we've been in the past, but also the way that our society is built.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? Wow. I just also wanted to ask, because at the beginning you were saying that, your final hangover, it was spent with your parents. How did they react to you giving up drinking for good? Because it's been 9 years. So it wasn't the 30 and your friends too. It wasn't the the 90 days you said. So did they get on board quickly? Were people supportive?
I think people thought it wasn't going to last at first because I was known as the biggest party girl. Like, you know, she's the champagne girl. Of course, she's going to start drinking again. So they were all sort of like rolling their eyes and waiting it out. You know, oh, now she's doing 60 days, or now she's doing 90. But eventually, it becomes the new normal. Eventually, they start to see you in a new light, and you know, it just takes time. And so now, of course, everyone knows me as the non-drinker, and they know that I want to do non-drinking activities. But that took time. It takes time. It's an identity shift for ourselves. And I think so much of the suffering in early sobriety comes from not wanting to let go of our old identities, like grieving our old lives, which is understandable. But the sooner that we are able to embrace a new identity, the easier, the swifter the transition will be, the more peaceful it is. And yeah, it's the same. It's the same as if you had a, you know, best friend and you were always drinking buddies and she stopped drinking. It's going to take a while for you to see her in a new light, to see her new identity. So yeah, just to anyone is mostly scared about that, of what people will say, I totally get it. And it really can change, you know, with time.
Yeah. And you mentioned grieving. I'm really into that at the moment about having a grieving process around sobriety, because it's such a surprise for some people to hear that that's actually what happens. And because and it can happen with the friends who are losing, or they think are losing us. And for me, I sort of through my coaching did a process around that. But you know, coming out the other side, like we've talked about, is amazing, and you don't have to lose anyone. You know, the right people will stay. But how did you deal with everything? Did you do a course? Was it your course that you designed that helped you through? Like, how did you get? Because there is work involved, and I don't want to scare people.
Yes,
we do have to look within. So, how did you do that? What was your process?
I suppose for me, like, I'm a natural born researcher. And so I consumed everything that I could get my hands on, like, you know, every book, every podcast, every course and stuff. But there were so many elements in my health coaching that I was like, this is all helping me with sobriety. And turns out they're all just self-care tools, right? They're all just self-care practices. You know, there's so many different things we can use, from EFT to like breathing to you know, meditations, and so many different aspects, including nutrition and things like that as well, that can really change how we feel. It was all of those things that really helped me most. And they were what I put into Sexy Sobriety, because I was like, oh my gosh, like all of these things that I was learning about nutrition and self-care, they really apply to sobriety. So I was putting them in there. And then as for like going deeper into work, I think I'm just constantly learning. And I think this is such a fun aspect of it, because now I'm getting so fascinated by healing trauma, by the new work people are doing with psychedelics as well, as far as like microdosing and healing long held traumas and things like that. I think it's really exciting, like where we're going as a society. That, you know, in my mind, I'm like, what if in 10 years there is no more mental illness? What if there's no more addiction, no more, you know, like what kind of world could that be? So I guess what keeps me going, what gets me here, is just the constant learning and researching. And there's so much to discover about ourselves and about humans. I love studying human behavior and just like seeing how things play out, that could keep us entertained forever, you know?
Yeah. I'm very similar. And I've met a lot of people along this journey who are similar too. And I think just that hunger to learn more and keeps you going and keeps you, you know, focused. And like you, I did before this, I became a nutrition coach. So I did that too. And it's interesting to see how many of us were so interested in health, but drinking was our downfall.
Right. Isn't that
It's
fascinating?
yeah.
Like when I first started as well, like we would sort of have a lot of things that we would put out there, and I really had a convergence of those two audiences because I had a health blog and then I started talking about sobriety. So I saw how many of them, we sort of like get all these other things in place. I'm drinking green juice in the morning and then cocktails at night.
Yes.
Yes.
Totally. Might even be, if you thought you wanted to be really healthy, green juice in the morning and then a Bloody Mary.
Yes,
Night.
exactly.
Everything was good except that drinking. It's
Yes.
been really interesting. And I also wanted to say, when you said people who drink can be or have addictions are really sensitive, and I remember my first psychologist when I was 17, because I developed a terrible social phobia at the time, and I didn't drink till I was 18. So, but I remember him saying, we're special, we're sensitive people. And it was just he made me feel okay, with myself. And then when I, started drinking and over the years have seen big drinkers, I do think they're really sensitive and we are in tune. You can read a room. And so that all resonated to me when I read that, when you'd said that. And so I think there's a lot of, there's special people out there who, drink too much. The shame and everything is just so not worth it, is it? We learn to not have that. And I want people to know that you don't have to carry that shame and guilt because we're not doing anything wrong. I mean, some of our actions can, well, I'm sure I did some things wrong, but alcohol's addictive. So taking the blame off and, realizing there's really good people and there is another side to this.
Exactly.
And people like us are there to help.
Exactly. And it's, it's the shame that is put on to drinkers, like to big drinkers in a society. Like, it is about the substance. It is about the behavior, not the person themselves. Like it's not a moral failing. Like
Yes.
I think Holly Whitaker had said, about it's an experience, not an identity. And that really resonated with me because I was like, it was an experience. It's not like, you're not that forever. And also there's so much relief that comes from all that shame and guilt when you step into, like, when you take your power back from alcohol, when you are like, I'm not doing that to myself anymore. I'm worth more. And like, that's going to be in my past. There's so much relief from all that shame as well, and guilt and remorse.
Absolutely. Well, I have loved talking to you. Can I ask, what is next on your agenda? And I know you've mentioned books, so possibly that can be taking up every waking second. But,
yes. Books, and I've got a few courses as well. Like I had some like we recently launched a couple of I say weeks, my partner in love, Dominic, he works with me in the business.
Amazing.
And we recently released a couple of ebooks, which was one was about a dessert super smoothie or dessert elixir recipes, and one was about healthy eating as well. And so I'm just sort of I'm looking at the moment at that convergence between the healthy stuff and the sobriety, and just like having some fun with bringing out some new products, like some new mini courses, some new recipe ebooks, as well as some more written books. So I'm excited for a big creative year.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I will look at the smoothie dessert recipes because sugar is now my next downfall,
sugar. Yes.
I go through ups and downs, and I'm pretty good overall, but just having some different options for something nice and tasty at night that's not gonna make me feel like crap.
Exactly. I have the biggest sweet tooth ever, so I completely understand.
Yeah. One of my favorite things when I have it doesn't take a lot of energy, but is to have dates and stuff them with like a nut butter and then put melted dark chocolate over them. Delicious. That's a yummy one.
It is.
It's having things prepared and then I won't snack on the Biscoff.
Exactly. Because at least those ones, like at least if you're having the dates and things, like there's vitamins and minerals in there. So it's, it's so much better than the refined stuff.
Totally. There are options out there for when we're having too much sugar. But thank you. So where can we find you? What's your website?
I'm at bexweller.com.
Awesome. That's an easy one. I'll also put it in the show notes. Yeah, it's just been so good to talk to you and meet you. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. And
Meg, I could talk to you all day.
I know, absolutely. I'm just conscious that we could do that. But it's been lovely. And I feel like I know you just because I've, like I said, 4.5 years ago when I began my journey, and I haven't been sober 4.5 years, but that's when I started to really think about it. Your book was a game changer. Your course was, and like you mentioned, just getting into podcasts and books was a huge way to start making that change. And so thank you for being there.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, well, good luck with everything. And I am going to be watching you and getting those new books as they come out. So yeah, I look forward to seeing your new adventures.
Thanks so much, Meg.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bex.
everyone.
Thank you.